world unexplored, no tome unread, no dice unrolled.
Hi Maz.
Hello.
Hi Grant.
Hello.
And hi Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for being here and accepting this interview by No Dice Unrolled. We are here to talk about your work, your amazing work, Spire. It's an RPG, tabletop RPG about a city where Drow and Elfir clash in a very dark and in a very dark way, full of intrigue. And these two factions try to win the control of some areas of the city, but the Elfir are the government. They govern the city. Where did you find the inspiration for this kind of work? And
Warhammer 40,000.
Okay.
Spire started as a hack for Dark Heresy, which is I don't know whether you have it over here, but it's like the before Wrath and Glory. Dark Heresy was the Warhammer 40k game, and you play agents of the Inquisition. And I always thought the rules weren't doing what I wanted, so I started writing a hack of that. And then I realised that I didn't have the rights to Warhammer 40,000 because Games Workshop have those rights. So we just changed it all to elves.
Such a great work, because the difference is huge. But
yeah, we spent a lot of time.
I'm sure about that. But the point is, these games are very, very different one from the other. So I had an impression. Spire is more about a realistic intrigue clash game. Is more about something that a person could find in reality. Okay. Is there any precise reference to a situation somewhere in our world?
Specifically, no. Okay. Like, we've had comparisons to various conflicts and colonialization and all sorts of stuff through the time the book's been out. But it's turned out that a lot of people have sort of put their own country's problems into that conflict. And we'd much rather have that, like people enjoying the game and seeing their culture reflected, than to go, no, it's this. This is the true version. There's like, if you've read Spire, there's nothing in the book that's specifically true. We contradict ourselves constantly. The book is very free, and you take what you want from it. So no, there's no real world analog straight away.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say is that lots of people all over the world have the experience of being oppressed, or have the experience of being the oppressor. We are English. We did a lot of bad things as a nation over the centuries, and there is something really powerful about allowing people to finding a space where you can explore what it's really like to be colonized, to fight back against that, and to make decisions about that in a space that lets you treat those things not like they are happening to you right now, but like a thing that you can explore in a way that
and defeat.
Yeah, and defeat.
Yeah, it's a cathartic game, I think, as well, in that change is like change on a grand scale. We don't necessarily support Inspire, but it is possible to make an impact with just 5 of you, and that's something which I think, like when I started writing it in 2016, I felt really like I can't affect the world, I can't change the world, and so I wanted a space to play in where maybe 4 lunatics could actually make a change in the world.
This is amazing, because all what you said is my first impression. I mean, Spire is a game where you can find a real escape from reality. You can find some elements that are in your reality, your everyday reality, and you can find a way to fight them and improve yourself, maybe. But the next point is about a name that you use, terrorism. You talk about terrorism and not something lighter, like guerrilla or something like that. Do you want to highlight that there aren't real good people? I mean, Dark Elves and High Elves are both in this struggle with their own reasons. Is this what you want to tell?
Yours, baby.
Yeah,
The
so
worst person on the team.
especially when I do games, I like games where there's no clear-cut good guy and bad guy. Everybody has to be shades of grey, or they immediately seem unreal. You need that thing where, like, oh yes, I saved all these people, but these 3 orphanages burnt down. And making those moral decisions and putting players in really difficult situations where there's 2 bad decisions. There's 2 bad things. And do you want the one that helps people at the end of it? You know, sort of ends justify the means? Or do you want personal gain? And you at the table have to make that decision. And it's a safe space to do that in, where you can make the bad decision if you want, or you can make the good decision and see how it plays out. You're not actually hurting anybody. You can experiment and play with it.
Okay. And another similar thought that I had when I read your manual is about the protagonists, the Dark Elves. Did you choose them because you wanted to go against the stereotype of the classic D&D Dark Evil Elves, or is there any other specific reason?
Do you have anything on this one?
So this wasn't my choice, but I can talk a little bit about it. The Dark Elves, so a lot of the way the game treats morality is a reaction against Dungeons and Dragons, and those kinds of, like, good and evil are quantifiable things that exist in the world, and you can have an evil being or a good being, and that's not about what someone does, it's about something that is built into them. That's a very essentialist way of treating the world.
Maybe old.
Yeah, I think so. The reason why the Dark Elves have such a bad name for themselves is because someone else wrote the books about them. Someone who didn't like the Dark Elves got in charge and wrote all these horrible things about why they are the way they are and spread lies about them. And that's, again, this is something which I think has real world parallels, and it's one of the things that makes the kind of engine of the game work, because a lot of people, like, Spire is nobody's first role-playing game, right? Very few people come to Spire without knowing a bit about D&D and a bit about alignment and often a bit about Dark Elves, and the thing that they know is Dark Elves are evil and bad because D&D has told them that, not because that exists. And because this is a fantasy and a fantasy race, we can play with that. And so in all of our games, including Heart that came after, there is no such thing as, like, a racial bonus, a racial kind of stat block. Everything is about ancestries and cultures, and there is no monoculture. There are different types, there are different places, and these things have different mixes. And it's about people being people, but perceived in a particular way because of their characteristics.
Okay, here again there is a great fight against stereotypes and old views of the world, we could say. And so this is your point of view, but how did the first players react to this game, a game in which you play Dark Elves, in which you are not exactly good, and as you said, you play a being that in past was really, really bad, and moreover, your action have an impact, but they are not so dramatically efficient, like in D&D that you can kill a god and change and save the world. How did they react to this soft approach?
They killed the god and saved the world. In the very first game of Spire we ran, the players resurrected a river god from the North Docks and then killed it to curse all of the Elfir to, like, with this magical wasting disease. So it was like they committed fantasy genocide within about 5 sessions. Like, more commonly, what we see, 'cause that was the first one, and that was the sort of the play. Yeah, that got out of hand. More commonly, it pushes towards an immediate tragedy. So they'll try really hard, they will achieve some victories, and then effectively, generally everyone gets shot, and like 2 or 3 people will run away and survive. And I think there's something quite pessimistic about it,
but realistic.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Like the thing that we tried to keep in, even though everybody is a bit magical, is that they're real people with real problems. And
killable friends.
And like, you'll find ministers and the magisters sending them people off to basically die in a lot of cases. They're these under-equipped people. They're fighting for a cause they believe in, but that might not at times be just. And doing that as normal people is challenging. And it's really interesting when you put people into these situations like, okay, we've got to control the production of weapons in this district. Well, one way we can do that is we can arm people with them, but that's going to cost a lot of lives. Or we could destroy them, but that's going to start a fire. And them struggling with that and then fighting against that is so much fun to watch every time.
Absolutely.
I think one of the interesting things is how people who are used to D&D, used to those kinds of games, react to the idea that there are no heroes, and also that a lot of things you do are going to have negative consequences. So the system that Grant and Chris wrote, the Fallout, the resistance system, has a concept called Fallout, where every time you roll for something, every time you roll to do something, there is a chance that it's going to go badly wrong, and that it's going to go wrong in a way which will have longer term consequences. Some people react to that in a way that can make some people feel really like paralyzed, but for other people, it's almost like it's galvanizing. It gets them into this kind of rhythm where you push it, and because of your actions, consequences happen. Nothing ever happens sort of accidentally. It's always because you pushed. And I think there's something really hopeful about Spire. We're talking about it as this big sort of doomed thing, but the whole point of the game is that change is possible.
Yeah.
And does its weight.
Yes. Change, and it has a cost. Change always has a cost. And sometimes that cost is unbearable, but that change is possible. Change does happen, and that I find that much more hopeful, I think, than either of you do.
You talked about the game system, and I have a question about it. The first impression is that is very universal. I mean, managing resources is very popular, but there is a very different thing in this game, that every resource is related to a specific element of the setting. Was it difficult to find this balance?
Yes.
Yes,
hugely difficult. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Whenever, so we've written Heart as well, and there are a lot of people creating games using the resistance system at present. I think there's about like 5 or 6 ongoing projects, and the first question that you have to ask is, what are your resistances? What can you afford or not afford to lose? And so I think the one that I'm most happy with, and the one that's closest to Spire, is Shadow resistance. I don't know what it's called in the Italian version, but Umbra. And the idea is that's how close you are to being tracked down by the police. That's how much pressure the city's putting upon you, and that's rather than tracking resistance in terms of, right, you've got hit points, or right, you've got 5 sanity, and then when you lose sanity, you go mad. You only ever accrue stress to resistance. It only ever gets worse from the start.
You don't have a real salvation, let's say, a real save point.
No.
Okay.
No, even if you use the action which is laying low, which is a good way to get rid of a lot of the stress in the system moves on without you. The world isn't static; it keeps happening, and we did the SRD, so you can download the very basics of the resistance system, and it is impossible to run a game from it.
Yeah, it's not a game.
You cannot do it because the rules set is so intrinsically linked to your system, because of those 5 resistances, what you have to lose, and that's going to change every time. So you can't run a generic version of it because you have to know where you're setting the world and what's important to the people in it and what they're fighting for. So no, every time we have to do a new set of resistances, it gets harder.
Okay. This leads to the last question, also because we have to run away. Yeah. But so, what can player find in the Strata manual, or do you have any other work that you are?
So Strata is a book more of lore in the world.
Okay.
It's explaining a little bit more about certain districts. It's kind of deep diving into areas and different parts of the power structure. It gives players a bit more choice in the form of 2 classes, including the very important Inksmith that everybody loves. I can't remember what the Italian is for it. In the book, she has a revolver and a very big hat. First character class.
Oh, okay.
Hedy Lamarr looking.
Yes, yeah. Everybody loves them, and it's more inspiration,
Okay.
rather than anything else.
And also, it was the first time where we gave other writers the keys to Spire and asked them to write scenarios. So there's a lot of really interesting writers, some of whom who've written, who are veterans, some of whom who've never written a role-playing game scenario before. And what we wanted to do was get in touch with those people and find people who understood Spire, understood the, almost like got the joke, as it were.
Yeah, so one of the writers has written a sort of murder mystery scenario set in a bakery. Where the player characters are running the bakery. It includes a hyena that has a knife. He's a very good boy. There's another scenario written by Pauline Chan, which is
Lines in the Dirt.
Lines in the Dust.
Lines in the Dirt.
Lines in the Dirt, which is about what happens in a kind of Kowloon walled city kind of environment when someone tries to evict the tenants who are there. We gave the Spire setting in the game to a bunch of different people, and people put their stamp on it. And some of those scenarios you can run as campaigns, some might just be inspiration, but they're all giving people access to a slightly different version of the world. And one of the really important things about Spire that Chris was talking about earlier is that there's no one canon, there's no right answer. It's meant to be a setting where you take what is interesting to you and what you want to play with, and then you fill in the gaps. And you let your players fill in the gaps. I think the Inksmith, a lot of the character classes have powers that force the GM to let the players make things up about the world. And so Strata's about giving a lot more doorways in, a lot more routes in to the world of Spire.
A personal experience, I would say.
Exactly.
And also one of the nice things about bringing in other writers is that we had people from countries that England had colonialized, and other cultures and other voices. So you got this other side of the equation come in, and they applied their own special spin to it that we could just not have done. Yeah. We could not have touched. We could have tried and it would have been awful and disrespectful, but we let them do exactly what they want with it. With almost no control. Like, we just, off you go, enjoy
their
yourself.
Point of view.
Exactly, yeah. And bringing those points of view to it just made it 1,000 times better. Yeah.
So, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this interview. And it was a pleasure for us to talk to you.
Thank you for having us.
I wish you all the best for your next works. And see you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for staying with us. If you've enjoyed yourself, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.